FIG Bulletin Volume 3 FIG Bulletin Number 10 FIG Bulletin Date February 1997 English Edition July 1998 Author Billy Meyer Translator S. Heidi Peters Date of translation unknown. Synopsis. Topics include falsified UFO photographs by Herbert Runkle, Bernd Johann, and Thomas Klingler. Meyer's Kingdom vs. Korf. Questions from our readers. UFO sightings by astronauts. Mystical beings, magical maggots. Witches with no end in sight. Second Wall of China. Discovery of Cleopatra's Palace. A black hole exists at the center of our Milky Way galaxy. Discovery of a 5,000-year-old city. 1/4 of all mammals on Earth are threatened with extinction. FIG Bulletin 10 Translation. Falsified UFO photographs by Herbert Runkle, Bernd Johann, and Thomas Klingler. Photo 1. Forged UFO photograph with a purported Andromeda spaceship/energy craft. In the foreground, on the hood of the car, are Herbert Runkle right and Thomas Klingler left. Photo 2. Forged UFO photograph with a purported Andromeda spaceship/energy craft. Leaning against the car is Bernd Johann. With these truthful explanations and statements, I trust that all written, telephone and personal inquiries regarding this matter have been addressed so I can finally close this subject. However, in the event that actions by my ex-wife, Herbert Runkle, Bernd Johann, and Thomas Klingler, require further clarification and evidence, particularly in regard to P. and Herbert Runkle, I will do so, of course, in order to keep interested parties informed of other pertinent and rather ugly background details. Billy. As many people are aware, the schemer Cal K. Korf is also busily assembling his defamations against me. Indeed, even on the internet the waves are rising, and some busy hands and minds are at work at American UFO magazine as well. And yet, some contributors to the magazine do not walk hand in hand with Korf, as demonstrated in UFO magazine, Volume 11, No. 5, 1996, Meyer's Kingdom vs. Korf. Editor, I do not fully agree with George Early's glowing review of Cal Korf's book Spaceships of the Pleiades, The Billy Meyer Story, Volume 11, No. 2. From my point of view, this book is far from meticulous and highly readable. I do not have a vested financial interest in Meyer's claims, nor have I ever taken Meyer's tall tales seriously. What I do have, though, is a little more knowledge about Meyer than the average UFO magazine reader. I became interested in Meyer in the early 1980s and bought the 2 photojournals, first editions, and the videotape of Meyer's films. I also bought Korf's original 1981 mimeographed pamphlet, The Meyer Incident, the most infamous hoax in ufology, which was delivered to my hands by his editorial assistant, William Moore. I cannot list here all the inconsistencies I found, at least 50, in Korf's latest attempt, but here are a couple of the most aggravating ones. 1. On page 330 Korf adamantly sustains his erroneous assumption that Meyer's 35mm camera is a single-lens reflex. Once and for all, Korf, it is a rangefinder. 2. On page 110 Korf says, there are no original photographic negatives or source materials of any of Meyer's UFO pictures in existence. So, how does Meyer reproduce those that he sells and of which Korf bought a few? Korf's book is not worthy of Early's review. However, to be fair, credit must be given to Korf for his endeavor, faulty as it is. I wish Korf had not brushed off Meyer's movie film, for that should have been a major part of his book. As far as I'm concerned, Meyer's movie film looks good enough to convince anyone that UFOs exist, and a brush-off is not responsible reporting. Edward Lopez, New York, New York. Questions from our readers. Question 1. How are your telepathic contact conversations transmitted? Th. Habalik/Czech Republic. Responds: the method by which contact conversations are transmitted has remained the same from the very beginning, and this is how it works. As soon as these contact conversations actually begin to take place, they always have been, and continue to be, directly transmitted through the consciousness of the Pleiadian/Pelagian contact person to some highly sensitive technological devices on board their beamship/spacecraft, where everything is stored. These onboard devices transform the conversations into symbolic images of a spiritual telepathic nature, whereupon they are immediately transmitted to a stationary control capsule high above the Earth's orbit, where they are stored. Therefore, not a single word nor the meaning of the conversation is lost. When I am ready to recall the contact conversation, I use a spirit telepathic code word to activate the storage device within the control capsule some minutes, hours or often days or weeks later, whereupon the stored conversations are transmitted to me in spirit telepathic symbols. These symbols are assimilated within my spirit's consciousness and are then conveyed to my material consciousness, where I transform the spirit telepathic symbols into words and sentences with which I am familiar. While the wording and sentence structure may, inevitably, no longer be identical to the ones actually used during the conversation, they are, nonetheless, 100% guaranteed to represent the exact connotation, value, and the meaning of the words and sentences in the original conversation, although what I may jot down later is no longer precisely the same wording. Because I have to transform the symbolic images once again back into words and sentences, the illusion is created that practically everything I write down is stored in my own particular type of language and wording. Still, the final printed information represents the identical meaning of the spoken and transmitted words. This process may be compared to a translation from one language to another, whereby the translator's written and spoken style come through. Consequently, you can spot my own vernacular in sentences or similar forms of conversation reproductions. Sometimes, however, I am able to recite ad verbatim certain expressions in word creations I receive from my contact person as long as I can still remember them from our conversation. I can only access stored conversations from the control capsule once. From then onward the conversation becomes irretrievable for me because it is then stored elsewhere, in a place that is inaccessible to me. But the main thing is that all contact conversations remain in the storage device, which is available to me until I access it and jot down the entire text. The transmission rate coincides with my typing speed, which, before my collapse in 1982, was 1200 characters per minute with one hand. In order for me to have typed at this speed, it was necessary for Quetzal to modify my typewriter to make it operate faster and more efficiently. Question 2. What do the Pleiadians, respectively Pelagians, and you think of genetic engineering? Eugen Huber, Switzerland. Responds: I am convinced that the Pleiadian/Pelagians' opinion is correct when they say that the time is ripe for us terrestrials to fulfill requirements for our evolution, including the genetic factor. Genetic technology, that is, gene engineering and manipulation, is an inevitable, unstoppable development process that exists among every highly evolved civilization throughout the entire universe. Hence, even terrestrial humans cannot avoid implementing genetic engineering and manipulation. It is not only wrong for incognizant or arrogant people and organizations, such as Greenpeace, to rebel against it. In so doing they actually thwart human development. While the genetic engineering progress cannot be stifled through irrational standoffs, they may, nonetheless, result in obstacles and relapses of its development. The mere fact that plants can be altered to the point where they become more prolific and resistant to diseases, should be reason enough to look favorably upon genetic engineering, for it can positively influence and remedy much of this planet's hunger, poverty, and misery. Of course, medical implications must also be taken into account, which are so critical for human survival, such as those involving transplants and medications, to mention but two. Furthermore, genetic engineers and other genetic scientists do not simply fall from the sky as masters of their own particular disciplines. They must study their field intensely in order to master this subject. The investigation of any new technology will inevitably precipitate mistakes, however. But from mistakes additional studies, research and a guarantee of further progress will ensue. Understandably, occasional harm may result from mistakes in the exploration and development of terrestrial genetic technology since it currently is still in its infancy. But possible failures should not be taken as a bad omen and a reason for distorting all of this research and for stomping it into the ground. Inevitably, development will result in errors and maybe even harm. And yet, researchers would be ill-advised to give up on their projects. It is vital that the research now in progress continues and that steps be taken to alleviate as many mistakes as possible. However, this type of work cannot take place in a terror-filled environment as is exemplified, for instance, by Greenpeace activism. Genetic technology is a vital facet of our development, essential for our evolution, and cannot be circumvented in the long run, even by terrestrials. In other words, it is much more constructive for us to rationally support the appropriate genetic scientific experts than it is to boycott them. Anyone boycotting them impedes not only human evolution, but takes on the responsibility for a great deal of suffering, poverty, and misery that may befall humans, animals and all nature on Earth. To have a hostile attitude toward genetic technology is to commit an irresponsible and criminal transgression against terrestrial humankind and the entire planet, including its floral and faunal life forms. Question 3. A. In your overpopulation brochure number 3, page 9, you state a family of 5 requires 1 hectare approx. 2.5 acres of land to feed itself, maintain a garden, and allow for freedom of movement. But in the next sentence you say that 1 kilometer 2 square kilometers equals 0.39 mile 2 should be calculated for every 12-person group. B. How do you come up with these results when 1 hectare land with an area of 10,000 meters 2 square meters equals 100 x 100 meters approx. 330 x 330 feet is required for 5 persons. 10,000 divided by 5 equals 2,000 meters 2 per person, and then you state that 12 persons require 1 square kilometer 0.39 mile 2 fertile land, which amounts to 1,000 meters 1,000 meters or 1 million meters 1 million divided by 12 equals 83,000 meters 2 per person? Fritz Goldman, Austria. Responds, A. The number of 5 persons per 1 hectare refers to people who live in settlements, such as villages, cities or larger clans and tribal housing areas. This implies that a total of 500 persons should be living on 1 square kilometer 0.39 mile 2 in such areas. And yet, here on Earth the number of people today is a multiple of this recommended total number. Furthermore, in such places, as a rule, neither gardens nor parks are allocated for the required level of self-sufficiency, because one house or apartment is constructed immediately adjacent to another house or apartment. The consequence is that individual families, frequently with many children, live door to door beside each other and have, therefore, no open space in which to move about. The 5-person rule applies only to population clusters such as villages, cities, and the like. On the other hand, we must allow in our calculation 12 persons per 1 square kilometer when dealing with open, fertile, tillable land, intended for agricultural and horticultural purposes. This type of land is not only intended for personal self-sufficiency but also for the general community's self-sufficiency. Although people within these communities are only able to plant fruit and vegetables, and keep a limited number of animals on their land of 10,000 meters to 107,632 feet to, the amount of arable land does not allow for any full-scale self-sufficiency. And of these 107,632 feet, 2 specific portions must be allocated for buildings, open-air recreational purposes and the like, which again require external food supplies so the people there can adequately subsist. These supplies must be provided by the agricultural and horticultural land areas where a mere 12 persons live per 0.39 mile to b. The optimum total human population the planet can adequately hold is calculated according to how much arable, fertile land is available. The area, in square kilometers, determines the maximum number of humans who should live on it. The total area is then divided by the number of people, taking into account that a certain number of them will live in villages, cities or other larger settlements, while the rest will live on large properties, tended by their tenants in an agricultural manner, who will supply food to the people in the villages, cities, and the like. On Earth we have available approximately 130 million square kilometers, 50.2 million miles of ice-free, fertile and barren land surface. However, this total land mass must not be used to calculate the optimum human population, for only the fertile land can be used in that calculation. The Earth's fertile land mass originally amounted to 24 million square kilometers, 9.3 million miles to. This amount of land would have allowed for the problem-free feeding of a total population of 529 million human beings when taking into account that 5 persons can live on 1 hectare, approx. 2.5 acres, in the villages, cities or other housing areas. If 12 persons can live on 1 square kilometer, 0.39 miles to, and if it is also utilized for agricultural and horticultural purposes. However, today only 18 million of the original 24 million square kilometers, 7 million of 9.3 million original miles of fertile land remain available since the terrestrial population, in a mad breeding spree, created this overpopulation problem and land destruction. The latter two dilemmas have already destroyed 6 million square kilometers, 2.3 million miles of this fertile land through the construction of villages, cities, airports, recreational/sports centers, factories, industrial plants, and others. Additionally, the populace has built dams and has induced the formation of bleak deserts in what previously were lush areas. Hence, if the original 24 million square kilometers or 9.3 million miles of fertile land are inhabited by 529 million humans, approximately 22 or 22.04 to be precise, persons can live on each 1 square kilometer or 0.39 mile not taking into account villages, cities or other settlements. When 18 million square kilometers, 7 million miles of fertile land are used in the calculation, 29.38 people of a total human population of 529 million would live on each square kilometer. This means that 18 of 30 persons now would have to live in villages, cities or large settlements, which amounts to approximately 2/3 of the entire population. Assuming now we have an allotment of 130 million square kilometers, 50.2 million miles of ice-free land surface available, this calculates out as 4.06 persons per 1 square kilometer provided the human population is a mere 529 million. Included in the number of square kilometers are, however, the desert areas, mountains, steppes and tundras along with other barren land masses and forests. Because today's human population has already reached a total of 6.3 billion for the entire ice-free land mass, we calculate that there are 48.46 persons per 1 square kilometer, 0.39 mile 2. Using the same population figures, this gives us 262.5 persons per 1 square kilometer for the original 24 million square kilometers, or 9.3 million miles 2. When the human population is calculated by applying the ratio to the remaining 18 million square kilometers, 7 million miles to arable land, the results, believe it or not, show 350 human beings per 1 square kilometer, or 0.39 mile 2 of land. Of course, in reality this is not the case, since many of these people live in villages, cities or other large settlements. If these many humans were to be dispersed over the entire number of square kilometers of remaining fertile land mass, the coverage would actually amount to 350 humans per 1 square kilometer, or 0.39 mile 2. This signifies that no agricultural and horticultural organizations whatsoever could operate on this land. The Fisher Almanac provides the following explanation for this situation. Quote, in 1993, the Earth's 130 million square kilometers, 50.2 million miles to ice-free land mass was covered by 32% forests, 11% farmland, and 26% pastures. The remaining 31% consisted, among other things, of grassland that was not used for agricultural purposes, marshes, as well as human settlements and transportation infrastructures. In studying this land on a worldwide basis, a distinct damage pattern of human origin was observed in 1990 upon nearly 15% of the ice-free land surface. Such damage affects 38% of all farmland, 21% of permanent grassland, and 18% of the forests and savannas. The largest contributor to the problem of land damage, at 56%, is water erosion, that is to say, the removal of topsoil by rain and runoff. And 28% of the damage is caused by wind erosion, that is, the relocation of soil by the wind. An annual total of 74 billion tons of soil is lost through water and wind erosion, and only 1-2 tons of soil per hectare, approx. 2.5 acres, are regenerated per year. In Europe and the USA, 17 tons are removed per hectare. In Asia, Africa, and South America, 30-40 tons per hectare are removed per year. Indeed, over the past 150 years, half of all fertile, arable land has been lost in this manner throughout the many regions. Of lesser significance, by comparison, is the chemical degradation of the land, which amounts to a global average of 12%. Soil degradation. The main categories of chemical and other degradation causes include toxification of the ground, through over-fertilization and pesticide abuse, industrial activities, garbage dumps, and harmful fumes from the air; acidification, from materials introduced through the air, acid rain, ammonia from livestock; salinization, generally through improper watering; loss of nutrients/humus, through inappropriate agricultural practices; soil compression, with 4% the smallest damage contributor, the use of agricultural devices too heavy for the soil, and the removal of surface vegetation. Cover-up, seal-in, traffic and building surfaces, and subsidence, for example, as a result of mining activities. The type, extent, and cause of ground degradation vary greatly from one region to another. The percentage of degraded surfaces of arable land can range from 16% in Oceania to 75% in Central America, Europe 25%. With degraded permanent grassland, the percentage ranges from 11% in North America to 31% in Africa. And with degraded forest and savannas surfaces, from 1% in North America to 38% in Central America. With the ever-growing human population on Earth, the loss of fertile, Arable ground increasingly brings into question the assured availability of global food supplies. The world's average per capita arable ground decreased from 0.41 hectare (1.01 acre) in 1961 to 0.24 hectare (0.59 acre) in 1993. Particularly affected by this trend are the underdeveloped countries. In 1993 the per capita available arable ground was only 0.16 hectare (0.39 acre), well below the allotment necessary to cover the 0.17-0.3 hectare (0.42-0.74 acre) minimum average produce requirements for humans. Question 4. A very cordial thank you for your reply to my questions. See Bulletin, Volume 2, Number 9, pages 6-8. Billy. I now have another question. Can you provide me with some estimate as to when planet Uni, respectively Nibiru or Nibiru, as it is also called according to your explanation, will depart/disappear again, and what link does the comet have with Uni, which supposedly also will appear in March 1997? Urs Graisman, Germany. Responds, your question refers to my response on page 8 of our Bulletin, Volume 2, Number 9. There is no consensus of opinions regarding the comet and planet Nibiru, respectively Uni/Nibiru. Some people who are focusing on this event hold the opinion that the planet and the comet are two completely different celestial bodies, while others speculate that the two are one and the same, with the implication that it is but one celestial body. This particular planet/comet has prompted extremely ludicrous speculations for some time now, and it may be important to note that in the past it played a major role in terrestrial history 3,600 years ago, when it generated a multitude of calculations and conjectures. The same wave of excitement holds true today, and theories are running rampant with respect to whether or not Uni/Nibiru/Nibiru will harmlessly pass by Earth, or whether it will be drawn toward the Martian field, which would eventually drag it into Earth's orbit. Purportedly, our dear old moon will be pushed aside, whereupon it will drift beyond recall into outer space, while Mars, supposedly, will approach Earth to become its new moon. Contention has it that in March 1997 planet/comet Nibiru will appear from behind our central star to radiate as a second sun, but for the time being it matters little whether it is one or two celestial bodies. In any case, we only know that on March 23, 1997, a single, gigantic comet is said to pass by the Earth, if we can call it that, and then will travel toward the Sun. On April 1, 1997, it should reach its closest orbital point to the Sun before it again disappears into the depths of space in September 1997. Regarding the planet/comet known as Uni or Nibiru or Nibiru, respectively, certain speculators claim the possibility exists that it is an inhabited celestial body and not a giant nuclear power plant like our Sun that produces light and warmth, and fosters the survival of life forms. However, proof of this theory has not been provided yet. Should this be simply the comet Hale-Bopp, see Bulletin, Volume 2, Number 9, page 8, which, in some circles, is also known as the planet Nibiru, then clearly it cannot be an inhabited celestial body. The only fact we are aware of at this time is that planet/comet Nibiru provided terrestrials 3,600 years ago with cause for great discussion and speculation. And now a super-large comet is approaching our Sun at tremendous speed, and the question arises whether or not this is Nibiru/Uni/Nibiru, the 10th planet of the Sol system. Some writers claim scientists have already determined that it will not endanger the Earth. But nobody seems to know for sure what will happen when the comet intersects the Martian orbit. The possibility does exist that it may be ripped from its own orbit and flung toward Earth. Supposedly, it will nudge our moon in the process and be slowed down in its path by the moon. The result could be that it would begin to orbit the Earth from this time onward, while our old lunar satellite would commence its endless voyage into outer space before, possibly, returning to Earth as a gigantic comet thousands of years hence. Still, speculation continues that Mars' ice-covered poles and the ice reserves beneath the planet's surface would be converted into water by the warmth of the Sun after becoming the orbital captive of Earth as a moon. Such an event would lay the foundation for a different atmosphere on Mars and allow people from Earth to colonize it. Yet other speculators assert that Nibiru is the precursor for an even far larger, inhabited planet, upon which the gods are said to reside. Another hypothesis and claim regarding Hale-Bopp was made on November 14, 1996, by Chuck Schrammick, an amateur astronomer who had previously taken a CCD picture of the comet. He stated he had observed a Saturn-like object in tow behind the gigantic comet. His remarks triggered a heated debate during which Courtney Brown, a self-proclaimed remote viewer, stated he could ascertain through his extrasensory capability that this Saturn-like second object in tow with the comet is maneuvered under intelligent guidance. Certain UFO advocates, as usual, brought Brown's testimony into their fold, and now they claim that the second object is actually an artificially constructed configuration inhabited by the gods. Furthermore, they claim that the comet itself is being guided by the gods from this inhabited configuration, and so forth. Astronomers, on the other hand, assume that the photographed mysterious object is simply a combination of a bright star in the background, with comet Hale-Bopp intersecting it in the foreground. Such speculations, whether true or not, originate from the same, extremely conflicting viewpoint in which the crop circle pictograms, specifically that of Grasdorf, play a particular role. Termed the pictograms of humanity's fate, their meaning will allegedly be recognized in the near future as the key to our future path. Planet Nibiru/Nibiru/Uni has always been termed the planet of the gods. It is said that its reappearance in the Sol system will introduce the golden era or the golden epoch of our solar system, respectively. Yet another name for planet/comet Nibiru must not be forgotten either when, in days of yore, it was called Antis. In connection with planet Nibiru and the crop circles, I must mention that some people claim the related pictograms are actually being drawn by the gods, to focus terrestrial attention toward future events, just as I have done on previous occasions. These events, the proponents claim, include Earth's reversal in rotation from west to east. The result would produce sunrises in the west and so forth. Likewise, they state that extraterrestrial races will officially land on Earth on March 27, 1997, and will commence contact with terrestrial governments. A portion of this claim can be traced back to the crop circles. This landing date was allegedly transmitted to two pub owner brothers during a 1-hour telephone conversation. Well, maybe we'll have a surprise on this point too if an actual ET public landing and the initiation of contacts with governments were to transpire. We would be delighted, of course. If this were to happen, however, all further contacts with the Pleiadians/Plagiarians would immediately cease, as they previously told me on several occasions. They abide by safety rules to preserve the secret of their Plagiarian culture and home worlds from other space travelers with lower evolutionary levels than their own, mainly to avoid disaster and havoc caused by other extraterrestrials. This does not even take into account the lesser evolved aliens' dangerously low vibration levels in comparison to those of the Plagiarians. Inquiry 1, No Codemion. I suspect that the voluntary retrogression of the wisest of the wise in human form is absolutely unique to the universe. Behind his extraordinary selfless and helpful act must have been a far more profound motive than merely the transgressions by Samjasa and his consorts. Can you tell me the actual reason? Inquiry 2, Fluidal forces. How can I neutralize extraneous negative fluidal forces which have settled inside my house, for example, poltergeist or within pieces of my furniture? Inquiry 3. Israelites. I recall that they originated from giants. The giants were infertile and eventually became extinct. Does this imply that the giants also left behind descendants of normal size? Inquiry 4. Electrosmog. I mentioned the harmfulness of electromagnetic energy. My findings show that sensitive people suffer harm from a mere 2 milligauss, respectively 20 Tesla. However, the majority of scientists vehemently deny this. Would it be possible for you to tell me the level and exposure period at which the average humans would sustain permanent damage? Additional questions in the next bulletin. Franco Cellini, Switzerland. Reply 1. Billions of years ago Nocodemion founded and created a highly evolved people/society. Slowly initially, then increasingly ever more rapidly over a very long time span, the people detached themselves from their roots after his death, and they negatively retrogressed from their life of positive consciousness, erroneously called spiritual life. Their degeneration threatened to engulf them in a war of galactic proportions. To bring the people back to their senses, Nocodemion re-established himself within a material body once again and returned from the Arihat-Sada level, a truly unique event in the universe. Pertinent information about Nocodemion is revealed in Contact 238 of May 18, 1991. German Contact Report Block Number 13, pages 2550-51. Reply 2. Extraneous fluidal forces, either in their negative or positive form, can be counteracted and dissolved by strengthening the conscious and emotional forces one possesses by gaining control over them to the point where the unwanted extraneous fluidal forces are counteracted. This feat can be a lengthy process, or a powerful, but brief, output of strength. Reply 3. The Israelites were never giants from ancient times forth, but were always a people of average height. However, in the regions where ancient Israelites lived there also dwelt foreign tribes of giants who were not part of the Israelitic lineage. It was these giants who became infertile and later extinct. Reply 4. In regard to the harm generated on humans by electromagnetic energy, I was never informed by the Pleiadians/Pleiadians about the danger levels or exposure periods. Billy frequently asked questions regarding Area 51. Answered by Psychosp dated May 22, 1995. What is Area 51? Area 51 is a block of government-owned land approximately 95 miles north of Las Vegas, Nevada. It is surrounded by the Nevada Testing Grounds and Nellis Air Force Base. Allegedly, the name Area 51 was initially found on an old map of the Nevada Testing Grounds. At the heart of Area 51, close to the shores of Groom Dry Lake, exists a large Air Force base which is not acknowledged publicly by the government. Airspace above the base is off-limits even for most military pilots, and is referred to as Dreamland by pilots using the radio frequencies in the area. What is the purpose of the Groom Lake Air Base? The base at Groom Lake has been the traditional testing site for America's latest generation of top-secret flying devices, black projects. The U-2, A-12, Senior 77 and F-117A were flight tested here, long before this fact was ever publicized. Since the government disavows anything pertaining to the base, information about what really goes on there is difficult to come by. Current rumors suggest two new flying devices exist there, an ultra-fast spy plane known as Aurora, and a smaller version of the B-2, which is said will replace the F-117A. Most projects at Groom Lake are probably of a more terrestrial nature and would interest only hardcore military enthusiasts. What about the UFOs? This region has been rich in UFO folklore for a long time. At Groom Lake rumors abound of imprisoned aliens, underground bases, secret agreements between extraterrestrials and the American government, or what have you. One of the more restrained and interesting stories centers around Bob Lazar from Las Vegas, Nevada, who says he worked with extraterrestrial flying saucers at the military installation of Papoose Lake, south of Groom Lake, in the sector of Area 51 he calls S4. He claims he helped back-engineer one of the saucer units, but never saw any actual extraterrestrials. Apparently his claims can neither be confirmed nor directly rejected. Since the time Lazar disclosed his claims during an interview on local television, many tourists have traveled to public areas closest to the base in an attempt to catch glimpses of the extraterrestrial flying objects. Of course, many believe they have indeed witnessed UFOs here, but oftentimes, because so many UFO-like natural and military phenomena are seen here, it is difficult to separate the chaff from the wheat. Many people have spent their entire lives in this region and have yet to see a UFO. It is important to note that there is a tremendous difference between stating that the government possesses extraterrestrial flying devices here and that one can come here to view actual flying saucers in the air. Generally speaking, the second claim is the less creditable of the two. Where do the observers go? Approximately 130 miles from Las Vegas, at the lane 29.5 mileage road marker on the remote Nevada Highway 375, there stands a local farmer's solitary mailbox. Since this black mailbox is the only marker on this stretch of highway, many true believers turn off from Highway 375 at this location. Many visitors claim they have seen flying saucers near here, while the farmer himself states he has never seen the like. Countless intensive wargame activities take place in this area, which frequently produce countless flares and other interesting lights in the sky. Perhaps some could be large UFOs, if one is inclined to envision them as such. There are two scenic vantage points on public land close to the Nevada testing grounds, Area 51, Boundary Whitesides and Freedom Ridge, from where the visitor can legally observe the air base. Unfortunately, the Air Force closed both these vantage points in April 1995. Currently, the base can still be observed from a distant mountain called Takabu Peak, but it requires a strenuous 1.5-hour hike to reach the observation point from a remote dirt road. What are the Camo Dudes? This is the nickname given to the anonymous security guards who patrol the military border. They wear camouflage uniforms without emblems and drive white Cherokee Jeeps with government logos. The guards closely monitor all visitors who approach the boundary within a several-mile limit, but have been mandated to avoid direct contact with visitors. What dangers are present while visiting this region? The greatest danger exists for those who wander into the unfenced military boundary. Such visitors are immediately arrested and can be fined up to $600. The points where the road crosses the military boundary are clearly marked with off-limits signs, and no one should trespass beyond these points. In the desert, the boundaries are marked with orange posts every 50 yards. Visitors should take heed and not roam in close proximity to the boundary at night, since the posts are not readily visible in the dark. Another great danger is that of getting stuck while driving in the area, since standard vehicles are not geared for the off-road driving conditions along these remote, unsurfaced and unmaintained roadways. UFO sightings by astronauts. From http://www.snowcrest.net/canarms/astro1.htm. Major Gordon Cooper, one of the original Mercury astronauts and the last American to fly in space alone. On May 15, 1963, he shot into space in a Mercury capsule for a 22-orbit journey around the world. During the final orbit, Major Gordon Cooper told the tracking station at Muchea, near Perth, Australia, that he could see a glowing, greenish object ahead of him quickly approaching his capsule. The UFO was real and solid, because it was picked up by Muchea's tracking radar. Cooper's sighting was reported by the National Broadcast Company, which was covering the flight step by step. But when Cooper landed, reporters were told that they would not be allowed to question him about the UFO sighting. Major Cooper was a firm believer in UFOs. 10 years earlier, in 1951, he had sighted a UFO while piloting an F-86 Sabra jet over western Germany. They were metallic, saucer-shaped discs at considerable altitude and could outmaneuver all American fighter planes. Major Cooper also testified before the United Nations, "I believe that these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting this planet from other planets." Most astronauts were reluctant to discuss UFOs. I did have occasion in 1951 to have 2 days of observation of many flights of them, of different sizes, flying in fighter formation, generally from east to west over Europe. And according to a taped interview by J.L. Ferrando, Major Cooper said, "For many years I have lived with a secret, in a secrecy imposed on all specialists in astronautics. I can now reveal that every day, in the USA, our radar instruments capture objects of form and composition unknown to us. And there are thousands of witness reports and a quantity of documents to prove this, but nobody wants to make them public. Why? Because authority is afraid that people may think of God knows what kind of horrible invaders. So the password still is, we have to avoid panic by all means." I was furthermore a witness to an extraordinary phenomenon, here on this planet Earth. It happened a few months ago in Florida. There I saw with my own eyes a defined area of ground being consumed by flames, with 4 indentions left by a flying object which had descended in the middle of a field. Beings had left the craft. There were other traces to prove this. They seemed to have studied topography, they had collected soil samples and, eventually, they returned to where they had come from, disappearing at enormous speed. I happen to know that authority did just about everything to keep this incident from the press and TV, in fear of a panicky reaction from the public. Ed White and James McDevitt. In June 1965, astronauts Ed White, first American to walk in space, and James McDevitt were passing over Hawaii in a Gemini spacecraft when they saw a weird-looking metallic object. The UFO had long arms sticking out of it. McDevitt took pictures with a cine camera. Those pictures have never been released. James Lovell and Frank Borman. In December 1965, Gemini astronauts James Lovell and Frank Borman also saw a UFO during their second orbit of their record-breaking 14-day flight. Borman reported that he saw an unidentified spacecraft some distance from their capsule. Gemini Control at Cape Kennedy told him that he was seeing the final stage of their own Titan booster rocket. Borman confirmed that he could see the booster rocket all right, but that he could also see something completely different. During James Lovell's flight on Gemini 7, Lovell, bogey AT 10 o'clock high. Capcom, this is Houston. Say again 7. Lovell, said we have a bogey AT 10 o'clock high. Capcom, Gemini 7, is that the booster or is that an actual sighting? Lovell, we have several actual sightings. Capcom. Estimated distance or size? Lovell, we also have the booster in sight. Mystical beings, magical maggots. Without having been requested to do so, and with great audacity, the self-appointed Swiss clairvoyant Maria Desoka is mailing out highly sensitive biomatter, which has the ability to react with the subconscious. The package contains, wrapped in a plastic baggie, 3 magical Maya beans. The clairvoyant writes, if these beans move, you are among the chosen few for whom the future holds in store great fortune, wealth, and recognition. The kicker is, of course, that these miracle beans are not free of charge but cost 100 hard Swiss francs, approx. $70. Only when a person pays out this sum can the power of the magical beans be rendered effective. The amazing thing is that these beans really do move, but when the phenomena is investigated by opening the small plastic bag and inspecting the beans against the advice of the clairvoyant, the person quickly discovers the actual and creepy secret. The beans move occasionally only because they house live maggots inside. Billy witches with no end in sight. The persecution of witches is alive and well in all countries, as we previously reported on page 1 in our Was from Insight publication number 100, September single quote 96 issue. Shortly thereafter, in November single quote 96, a new witch hunt case and the murder of innocent people was revealed. 7 people had been slaughtered in Mexico's Puebla province because neighbors suspected they were witches. According to press reports, 3 men set fire to the house of a family in the Sierra Negra village of Durosnotla, in an effort to burn alleged male and female witches. The inhabitants of the house, 4 adults and 3 children, fled from the blazing house, whereupon they were massacred with machetes and bullets. Only one 15-year-old girl survived the ordeal because she feigned death. Billy Second Wall of China. As we previously reported, in the fall of 1996, archaeologists have made a sensational discovery in central Mongolia. They found a second wall of China, which, for the most part, has yet to be unearthed. The walled fortification, consisting of forts, moats, and guard towers, extends for a distance of 5,000 kilometers (3,106 miles) from the Nanjang River to the Mongolian city of Baotou. Supposedly, the wall was erected in a record 75-year time frame by the nomadic Nuzan tribe during the 12th century. Billy discovery of Cleopatra's Palace. Alexandria, Egypt, September 1996. Divers made a sensational find in the harbor basin of Alexandria when they discovered remnants of legendary Egyptian Queen Cleopatra's 2,000-year-old palace. Judging from items found on location at a depth of 7 meters (21 feet), everything is said to be unbelievably luxurious and colorful. Unearthed also at the site were numerous obelisks, columns, statues, amphoras, and wall remnants. Beyond the shadow of any doubt, Cleopatra's palace was also the refuge and sanctuary of her husband, Mark Antony. Alexandria was founded in 331 before Christ and became a historical site because of the 2 love affairs Cleopatra had with Roman generals Mark Antony and Julius Caesar. For 2 years the Egyptian queen lived in Roman luxury until Julius Caesar was assassinated in 44 before Christ. 3 years after Caesar's death, Mark Antony, too, succumbed to Cleopatra's charms. In 31 before Christ, Cleopatra killed herself with the venom of an asp after Mark Antony was defeated by Octavian at Actium. A strong earthquake and subsequent tsunami leveled the royal palace and it disappeared beneath the waves of the Mediterranean. Billy, a black hole exists at the center of our Milky Way galaxy. It is highly likely that a black hole exists at the center of the Milky Way. Scientists from the Max Planck Institute for Extraterrestrial Physics in Garching, near Munich, Germany, have ascertained the giant mass of our gigantic galaxy's central object, equivalent mass of 2.5 million suns, indicates that the origin of its existence can only be explained as a black hole. The findings confirm what astronomers have suspected for quite some time, and they reaffirm what the Pleiadians/Plagiarians revealed to me years ago. According to Nature, issue No. 383, page 415, the view toward the center of the Milky Way and the constellation Sagittarius within the visible range of light is impeded by thick gas and dust clouds. However, within the field of radio frequencies at this location, scientists have isolated a small object very close to the center of this radiation source, and it may turn out to be the actual center of our galaxy. Given the abbreviation SGR, as in Sagittarius, this source of radiation remains almost motionless. Many scientists assume, therefore, that SGR * harbors a black hole. Black holes are formations with unimaginably high density, and for this reason 1 cubic centimeter (0.06 of matter weighs several tons. Because the gravity of black holes is great enough to draw in and swallow up even visible light and other vibrations, scientists have chosen to call the phenomenon a black hole. A black hole attracts every form of matter within a certain space or circumference, respectively, and draws it into its interior from where there is no escape. Theory is that a black hole forces all stars, suns, planets, gas formations, and the like surrounding it into nearly circular orbits. This theory could be confirmed by SGR *. Scientists claim that 39 stars orbit the center of the Milky Way in much the same way as planets orbit a sun. According to reports published in the fall of 1996, the measured velocities of these stars coincide with the scientists' calculations. The Pleiadians/Pleiadians have always said, and they reaffirmed their statements in the last prophecies/predictions, that the center of the Milky Way consists of one single black hole, which came into existence with the agglomeration of several smaller black holes. According to the Pleiadians/Pleiadians explanations, the chance is minimal that planets and suns will plunge into the black hole at the present time, since such events occur in our Milky Way only every 10,000 to 15,000 years. This implies that Earth itself is in no immediate danger since our home planet, along with our entire solar system, will have disintegrated before it ever reaches the black hole at the center of our galaxy. Although our sun is dying, its death will not actually take place prior to the terrestrial human population's relocation to foreign planets and alien solar systems. Likewise, free from any immediate danger are the other 39 stars/suns examined in the region of SGR*. Billy Russian Mars mission failure. As was reported worldwide in November 1996, the Russian mission Mars 96 failed. The probe sped out of control during its flight and plunged into the South Pacific Ocean near the Easter Islands in the early morning hours of November 18, 1996. Initial fears that the Mars probe would crash over Australia failed to materialize. The mission Mars 96 probe was launched from the Kazakhstan Baikonur space station on Sunday night, November 17, 1996. Because the Proton rocket's fourth stage did not ignite as planned, the probe could not achieve its predetermined trajectory to Mars. Instead, it entered an unstable orbit around Earth and plunged into the South Pacific in the early Monday morning hours. Billy discovery of a 5,000-year-old city. In the Sichuan province of China, a Chinese-Japanese team of archaeologists found the remnants of a city estimated to be 5,000 years old. This discovery has opened up new possibilities. Until now, the prevailing scientific posture and explanation have been that only 4 prehistoric civilizations existed: Egypt, Mesopotamia, and communities along the Indus and Yellow rivers. Once again, as usual, scientists have erred, and it appears that history must be rewritten for the umpteenth time. Billy, 1/4 of all mammals on Earth are threatened with extinction. According to data provided by the World Environmental Protection Union (IUCN), nearly 1/4 of all mammals on Earth are threatened with extinction. Currently 169 mammal species are listed. The principal causes for their extinction include premature death by hunting, environmental pollution, and habitat destruction. As a result of raw sewage being allowed to flow into previously pristine waters, many species of freshwater fish, reptiles and amphibians are also endangered now.